They came with the tide. Shadows on the horizon, dragon-proud ships slicing through the mist, sails heavy with wind and with destiny. The creak of timbers, the snap of ropes, the low hum of warriors chanting in a tongue older than the kingdoms they came to face. For nearly 3 centuries, the Vikings carved a legend across Europe and beyond, not just as raiders, but as traders, settlers, and kings. They brought fear to coasts that had never known war from the sea, and fire to towns that had never imagined an enemy arriving with the tide. Tonight, we follow their story in battle. When steel met shield, when fire licked timber, when the fate of kingdoms turned on a single wave. This is the Viking Battle Timeline, told in blood and in thunder. And as the waves close in, you'll hear not just the roar of the sea, but the echo of centuries, when a single fleet could change the map of the known world. Raid on Portland, Dorset, c. 789, England's southern edge. The Isle of Portland sits quiet under a pale sky, gulls circling lazily above the surf. A royal reeve, an official of the king, rides down to greet a new group of ships. He thinks they're merchants, bearing furs or amber from the north. He carries authority, not a sword, but these are not traders. They are Norsemen, lean, salt-skinned, armed. When they step ashore, there are no words, no negotiations, only the rush of movement. The reeve falls in a red instant, his body cooling on the sand. The news races inland faster than hoofbeats. Strangers have arrived who answer to no king in Britain and who play by no rules but their own. Yet the raid is more than murder. It is a message. It tells the Saxons that the sea is no longer a border, but a door. It tells every fishing village and market town that the wind can bring death without warning. And it whispers a truth the island has never faced. An enemy can appear from the horizon, strike like lightning, and vanish before the local fyrd even gathers its spears. For the first time, England tastes the fear of the north. Raid on Lindisfarne, 793. 4 years later, the storm truly breaks. Lindisfarne, a holy island off Northumbria, famed for its monastery, its golden manuscripts, and the quiet devotion of its monks. The air is rich with the smell of salt and wet stone. The monks hear the surf, but not the war horns. Long ships beach silently on the sand. Men spill out, iron in their hands. Doors splinter. The air fills with shouts and the metallic smell of blood. Candles fall, spilling wax across priceless manuscripts. Across Christendom, the shock is immediate and deep. If even God's own house can be torn apart, nowhere is safe. Chroniclers will mark this moment as the birth of the Viking Age. The raid on Lindisfarne will echo for generations, not merely because of its violence, but because it broke the unspoken law that sacred places were beyond the reach of war. In one morning, the Vikings shattered centuries of faith in that idea. Priests would whisper of it in distant cathedrals. Kings would hear of it in their halls, and peasants would carry the story by word of mouth until it became a living nightmare. The Northmen had not only plundered a monastery, they had declared that even heaven's servants could not hide from the storm at sea. Raid on Wearmouth Jarrow, 794. The next year, the monasteries of Wearmouth and Jarrow feel the Norsemen's presence. The river wears smells of spring blossom, but the horizon carries the pitch and tar of Viking hulls. This time it's not blind rage, it's reconnaissance. They strike quickly, then withdraw before the locals can mount a defense. The Vikings test the currents, measure tides, and note how long it takes for the fyrd to gather. Each raid is a lesson, each retreat a chance to sharpen the blade. Soon the Northumbrians will learn these are not isolated strikes, but the opening moves of a war without borders. Raids on Iona, 802, 806, 825. Iona, remote, sacred jewel of the Irish Sea. In 802, smoke blackens its skies as the monastery burns. In 806, 68 monks are cut down, white robes stained crimson in the sand. In 825, survivors scatter with relics and manuscripts. These strikes reveal the Viking truth. Sanctuaries are invitations. Relics are worth their weight in gold, and prayers cannot stop an axe. Iona's tragedy becomes a warning whispered across the Irish Sea. No matter how holy the ground, the Northmen can find you and their ships will return until nothing remains to take. Battle of Ellendun, 825. At Ellendun, Vikings fight beside Mercia against the rising Wessex. Mist clings to the grass as shield walls form, shoulder to shoulder, iron bosses gleaming. The clash is deafening. Spears thrust, swords hack, shields splinter. The West Saxons press forward until the Mercian line breaks, dragging the Vikings down with it. For the first time, the Norse taste bitter defeat on English soil. To the Saxons, it's only a pause in the storm. To the Vikings, a reminder that even the wolf can be hunted when the hounds run together. Siege of Constantinople, 860. Far from the misty isles of the west, Norse adventurers, now known as the Russ, sail rivers like roads, threading down the Dnieper to the Black Sea. Their prows turn toward the greatest city in the world, Constantinople, the queen of cities, her marble walls gleaming under the sun. The Norsemen arrive in force, their war cries echoing across the Bosporus. But the defenders have a secret: Greek fire. It erupts from bronze tubes and blazing arcs, clinging to wood, flesh, and water alike. Ships become pyres and the sea itself burns. The survivors retreat in shock, their confidence scorched away with the paint on their shields. They return north with tales of a city that breathes fire, of walls higher than the masts of their ships, of a people who have mastered the art of turning the sea into a weapon. For the Vikings, this is not merely a defeat, it is an awakening. They have learned that not all gates can be battered down, and not all seas are theirs to command. Siege of Dumbarton, 870 to 871. Back in the west, the fortress of Dumbarton stands atop a sheer basalt rock at the mouth of the River Clyde, its walls defiant against the surrounding waters. The Norse fleets arrived like a black tide, closing the estuary and choking off all escape. For months they wait, the smell of salt and unwashed bodies clinging to the air as the defenders' supplies rot in their waterfowls. The cries from within grow weaker with each passing week. When the gates finally fall, the Norse do not cheer. Instead, they herd the survivors into chains, bound for slave markets as far away as North Africa. This is Viking warfare at its coldest. Not glory, but profit. They know that starving an enemy is cheaper than fighting one, and that patience can yield more silver than the sharpest sword. Dumbarton becomes a lesson to every fortress along the coast. Walls can keep out an army, but they cannot keep out hunger. Battle of Hafrsfjord, circa 872. In Norway, rival jarls gather their fleets to crush a young warlord named Harald Fairhair before his power can spread. The waters of Hafrsfjord lie still under a gray sky, the air thick with the scent of salt and pine. As the fleets close, ships lash together with ropes and hooks, turning the calm fjord into a floating battlefield. Warriors leap from deck to deck, axes rising and falling in the mist. The shouts are deafened by the crash of shields and the splintering of oars. When the fog lifts, Harold stands victorious. His rivals lie dead or flee across the sea. Norway is his, united under one crown for the first time. Those who refuse to bend the knee take to their ships, carrying the Viking hunger westward to the Shetlands, the Faroes, Iceland, and beyond. The fjord's still waters become a memory for the exiles, a reminder of the day their homeland became another man's kingdom, and the day the Norse hunger for new shores began in earnest. Battle of Dollar, 875. In Scotland, the green hills around Dollar echo with the clash of steel. Viking blades meet Pictish spears in a storm of shouting men. The Norse advance with relentless pressure, their shield wall pushing like a tide against the Pictish line. Within hours, the defenders break, their banners trampled in the mud. The ancient Pictish kingdom falls, its proud warriors scattered. From these ashes will rise Alba, Scotland's future, its birth written in the blood of its ancestors. Yet the victory is not without meaning for the Norse. In crushing the Picts, they have reshaped the very map of the North. But for every hill and river they claim, they also inherit the endless task of holding what they have taken, for the land remembers its old kings. Siege of Exeter, 876. The great heathen army captures Exeter, planting its banner on the old Roman walls. Smoke rises from the nearby countryside as the Norse settle in, expecting to hold the city by force. But King Alfred of Wessex refuses to meet them in open battle. Instead, he cuts their supply lines, harasses their foragers, and forces them to survive on dwindling stores. Hunger, not the sword, begins to do his work. When negotiations finally open, Exeter is returned without a pitched battle. The peace is written on parchment, but the ink is barely dry before both sides know it will be broken. For the Norse, it is a rare retreat. For Alfred, it is proof that sometimes the surest victory is to let the enemy defeat himself. Battle of Chippenham, 878. Midwinter. Snow muffles the land, and the rivers lie under sheets of ice. Guthrum's Viking forces move like wolves through the white fields, descending on Chippenham during the Christmas feast. Fires are still burning in the hearths when the Norse break through the gates. King Alfred escapes into the marshes of Athelney, his kingdom shattered around him. But the marshes are not the end. They are the beginning. Hidden among the reeds, Alfred gathers loyal men, training and preparing for a counterstrike. The Norse believe they have broken the king. In truth, they have given him the one thing every hunter fears, a prey with time to think. Battle of Saucourt en Vimeo, 881. In Picardy, West Frankish forces lie in wait as a column of Vikings returns from a raid heavy with plunder. The ambush is sudden and brutal. Arrows rain from the tree line, cavalry smashes into the flank, and the Norse find themselves trapped between steel and swamp. Chroniclers claim 9,000 Northmen fall here, a number likely exaggerated, but enough to mark the day as one of the worst blows to Viking pride. The survivors limp home with empty hands, carrying a story that spreads faster than their ships. The Franks have learned to strike like the sea itself, without warning and without mercy. Battle of Leuven, 891. 2 years later, the Norse gather to face the Franks again at Leuven. The river runs high with spring melt, its banks slick with mud. Frankish cavalry thunders into the Viking lines, hooves tearing through shield walls. Those who flee find no escape. The river claims them. By day's end, the fields are strewn with bodies, and the Norse power in the Low Countries is broken for good. This defeat is more than the loss of land. It is the loss of momentum. The tide that once carried the Vikings into every river, mouth and harbor now begins to ebb, leaving behind the bones of ships and men alike. Battle of Tettenhall, 910. In England, Wessex and Mercia unite to meet a Viking host, led by 3 kings. They march south seeking plunder, but at Tettenhall, the Saxon shield wall holds firm. The clash is like a storm at sea, waves of men breaking against each other, shields splintering, swords ringing. When it ends, all 3 Viking kings lie dead, their banners torn and trampled into the mud. The victory does not end the Viking presence in England, but it ends their ability to strike with the same confidence. From this day, the hunters of the coast become the hunted in the fields. Battle of Confe, circa 915. Ireland's rivers run brown with spring rain as the High King Niall Glundubh faces the Norse of Dublin at Confe. The fighting is fierce, but the Norse break through, cutting down the king and scattering his men. For a moment, it seems Viking rule in Dublin will stand unshaken. Yet the victory is hollow. Rival Irish kingdoms close in, and the Norse find themselves fighting not for expansion, but for survival. In Ireland, the tide is beginning to turn, and the waves are carrying the Northmen back toward the sea. Battle of Clontarf, 1014. Good Friday. Outside Dublin, fields turn to mud and blood. High King Brian Boru faces Viking Dubliners and their Irish allies. From dawn until sunset, the battle rages. At last, the Vikings break and flee toward the sea, but the cost is terrible. Brian lies dead in his tent, struck down in the final moments of victory. This battle ends Viking dominance in Ireland, but also robs it of the king who might have united it. Clontarf is both triumph and tragedy, its memory haunting both Irish and Norse alike. Battle of Ascendon, 1016. England's fate hangs at Ascendon. Cnut the Great meets Edmund Ironside in a clash for the crown. The English fight with desperate courage, but betrayal opens a gap in their line. Cnut drives through, scattering defenders and sealing his claim. The Viking Age in England ends not in defeat, but in coronation. Cnut becomes king, ruling not as a raider, but as a monarch in London. For a time, the kingdoms of England and Denmark beat with the same heart. From the first Reeves' blood on Portland to a Norse king crowned in London, Viking battles reshaped the map of Europe. They brought terror and trade. They burned churches and built towns. They shattered kingdom and stitched new ones together across seas. Even now, in stone ruins and ancient place names, the Vikings remain. And when the surf thunders on a northern shore, perhaps you can still hear the oars.
Please subscribe and look for more documentaries at Swords and Shadows.